Amy. So Amy, if you want to call us to order and then do a roll call.
Yes. Hey, Maggie. We'll just say calling this Economic Development Commission to order.
Good job. And Jessica will help us with a roll call. Okay, do that. Commissioner Costa? Commissioner Hare? Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
Commissioner Kraft?
Here.
Commissioner Rex?
Here.
Commissioner Richardson? Commissioner Sweat? And Commissioner Whitmatch. Thank you. So I asked Amy to join us. We were on a different meeting recently, and we were talking about this commission, and offshore wind came up, and she offered to come and present. I thought it's a really good opportunity for this commission to know what's happening regarding offshore wind activities, and make sure that we can participate or be helpful if needed. And so Amy Jester is joining us tonight from Humboldt Area Foundation, and I'll let you take it from here, Amy. Thank you for joining us.
I think you are turning it over to me, Sam. Is that right? If you're talking, I can't hear you.
Same. I can't hear you either, Swan.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
It does. I was saying that we had a meeting together recently and thought that this would be a good thing to come to the Economic Development Commission for this commission to know what efforts are underway, and then also if there's anything that we can do to help or be supportive.
That's great. Thanks so much. I really appreciate the opportunity, and just appreciate the work that this group does, and the city of Eureka is thinking about, how I'm a resident of Eureka, so I'll say how we can move forward and adapt to this changing climate and really be climate leaders, not only for the region itself, but for this region to lead in like rural and tribal communities across the country about how we innovate on climate resilience. So I'm pleased to be here with all of you. I'm Amy Jester. I'm the Director of Policy Advocacy and Civic Leadership with Humboldt Area and Wild Rivers Community Foundation. And as I've noted, I am in Eureka, South Eureka, on unceded ancestral and current homelands of the Wiyot, of course. And really appreciate the opportunity again to talk with you all here today. So just really quickly, the Climate and Community Resilience Hub is an incubated program really at Humboldt Area Foundation. We worked with a number of other organizations over the course of 2021 to launch the Core Hub, or the Rugged Region Climate and Community Resilience Hub, which you'll hear me refer to as Core Hub. And the Core Hub launched in, I think it was October or November of 2021, so it's still very new. I'm going to be talking about offshore wind today. That's really like the first kind of big effort that the Core Hub is engaging in. And I'll just share that our advisory council includes folks like the CEO of the Humboldt Foundation, Brian Lipper, as well as Jana Gagnon from Blue Lake Rancheria Tribe, Arnie Jacobson from the Schatz Energy Research Center, Matthew Marshall from Redwood Community Energy Authority, Redwood Coast Energy Authority, and have included others at different points in time as well. So, and it really came out of the challenges that happened with the Terrigen project, and thinking about how we can be more prepared to really create a vision around how our communities can move forward with climate smart projects in ways that are that include engagement and participation and dialogue across different interests, about potential projects so that when they do come to our communities, we're in a more prepared place to effectively vet those and move them forward and really advance our region's climate resilience. So that's the whole purpose and point of the Core Hub. You can see on the screen here that the overarching goal of the Core Hub is to become the first proven carbon sequestering rural and tribal area in the United States. So I will flash forward here. So that's a little bit on Core Hub. In terms of offshore wind, we have been engaged, as Core Hub have been engaged in convening a diverse network of interests in coming together to imagine what we want to see as a result of offshore wind development happening here in our communities. And we're really doing that to the goal and effect that I had noted before about the purpose of the Core Hub, really to make sure that folks that may have an interest in offshore wind or be impacted by offshore wind understand how it's happening, what some opportunities are to engage in the state and federal processes that are guiding how offshore wind happens in our community. And in particular around the process that I'll talk about a little bit later on in our time here today, related to the federal government's proposed bidding, auction, and lease award process for corporate developers of offshore wind, which will be happening shortly in the fall of this year. So I'll provide a little bit of orientation for all of you about where we're at in the offshore wind process, but first wanted you to better understand what our particular interest is. And that's really about, ensuring that offshore wind happens in a way here that supports this place to thrive long into the future for many generations to come. And yet we don't continue, just because it's green energy doesn't mean that it's going to happen necessarily in a good way. So how can we work together to ensure that it does happen in a good way for our communities and does, again, support this place and thriving into the future? So as you can see on the screen here, offshore wind is happening both in Humboldt County, off the coast of Humboldt, as well as off the coast of Morro Bay. That effort is being led by the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, which is a federal agency under the Department of the Interior. And there are state agencies that are also moving it forward, such as the California Coastal Commission is a big one that's doing a lot of work on it, as well as the Public Utilities Commission and a number of others. Currently, that's all in support of the federal government's goal of 30 gigawatts of offshore wind energy by 2030, and is also in support of California's goal of becoming carbon neutral by 2045. So that, there's a lot of state and federal partnership and commitment to moving this forward. So it's definitely happening. And so our opportunity is to influence and plan for how it happens here. So, this is, again, showing the map of where the wind energy areas are off the coast of California. As you may know, as people who live here, we have world-class wind in this area. It is globally renowned for the volume and speed of wind that takes place off of our coasts. And so the federal government really sees this as as a critical energy resource for their climate and also diversified energy goals. I like to show this slide, which is from the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. A lot of folks have questions about how wind farms are actually going to work. And they're how simple this one is. Something to be aware of is that these are floating wind turbines. and that floating wind technology is new globally. So this is an opportunity to be sort of an earlier pilot site for floating wind, and there's a lot of research that, like the Shots Energy Research Center and others are doing around how that can effectively happen here. So again, another map that shows the Humboldt wind energy area more specifically. It's approximately 207 square miles, 20 miles off the shore of the Humboldt coast. There are the total potential capacity for that pink and blue space that you're seeing is about 1.6 gigawatts, or anywhere between 100 and 160 turbines in total. So if you're imagining a wind farm 20 miles out, the total capacity in what BOEM is looking at is 100 to 160 turbines. That would produce 3.8% of California's electricity generation in total, so it's significant. Currently, with transmission and electrical infrastructure that we have here already in this community, our capacity to actually use the wind energy that's generated is limited to 150 megawatts. So that would only be 10 to 15 turbines built out initially. So, and I'll talk a little bit more about BOEM's planned process, but it's very likely that when they are entertaining proposals, bids from wind developers in the fall, that they will focus the majority of their wind development interests in this moment in Morro Bay, and that they will potentially move forward with a build out of that 150 megawatt smaller 10 to 15 turbine wind farm now off the coast of Humboldt, or it's possible that might not happen more immediately until the transmission infrastructure is upgraded. And that can take a while with other big transmission infrastructure upgrades. They can, it can take a decade or more and cost anywhere between 1.2 and 4.4 billion dollars, depending on whether transmission goes from the coast over the mountains to east of Highway 5, or the more expensive route would be to not have energy come on shore in Humboldt at all, but just be transported through either a near shore or a deep sea cable that would basically go down to, closer to the Bay Area. So our ability to benefit from wind development that's happening off of our coast is up to us, I think, in a really big way. And I think your role as economic development commissioners for the city of Eureka, I think it's important for you to understand that it can go a number of different ways, and that's part of what we're really thinking about with this community benefit network that we're convening is what's the right level of development to happen here more immediately. And one of the things that we've been really thinking about is if we can encourage the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management to require that smaller build out of 10 to 15 turbines more immediately, that's going to really give us a lot of opportunity locally to shift more of our energy dependence to renewables, which could help us meet our own climate resilience goal and energy goals. And will also give us an opportunity to strengthen our local energy infrastructure before the more massive infrastructure and transmission upgrade happens for the larger 100 to 160 turbine farm that would happen sometime after 2030. I should also note that smaller wind farm development is something that they're wanting to have happen by 2030. Okay, here. So when we're thinking about offshore winds, it's important, and I think you all know this, but it's not just it's not just the farm that's developed, the offshore wind farm that's developed 20 miles off the coast. There's a lot of other pieces of development that happen as well. As I mentioned before, there's electrical transmission upgrades that has a bunch of economic development implications and community development implications. Where and how that electricity is transmitted to the state grid is going to have some impacts on our area and really require a lot of careful planning. Of course, Humboldt Bay Harbor District has been incredibly involved in development of offshore wind because we need to, do a major upgrade and are doing a major upgrade of the port in order to facilitate development of this industry here. There's also a lot in terms of supply chain. Who is it that's going to, what are all the different components needed to actually ensure that this new industry is viable? I mean, on the West Coast in general, but also here specifically in, the Humboldt Bay region, and what parts of that supply chain can we start to be a player in sourcing or developing. Of course, there's a lot in terms of workforce development. I have another slide that I'll show you momentarily around potential, workforce and employment opportunities and what those numbers look like. And of course, we know that there's a lot of the additional infrastructure that's required as new industry develops here in our communities. There are things like healthcare, housing, childcare, transportation, all that kind of stuff that we also need to account for and plan for. And of course, this is all happening alongside other really big shifts in our economic and community landscapes with things like, development of Cal Poly Humboldt and aquaculture that's happening with the aqua farm and other developments that are taking place here. So I think it's a really, it's part of this big shift in excitement and energy around community and economic development that are happening here. And with that, I think come a lot of opportunities. So here's that slide that I was mentioning. This is, based on research by the Pacific Northwest National Lab, and they've partnered a lot with the SHOTS Energy Research Center. I should note that if you really want to geek out on offshore wind, you can just spend hours on the SHOTS Energy Research Center's website. They do have a whole webinar that they did in 2020 specifically on economic development issues related to offshore winds. I know they were primarily still all relevant, so that's why I pulled this information from. So for that smaller wind farm that I was talking about, that 150 megawatt 10 to 15 turbines out there in the water, that's anticipated to require 3,000 construction jobs and then 2,000 ongoing operational jobs. So a lot of possibility in terms of workforce. For the larger wind farm that would likely come into development, in the 5+ years after 2030, that's going to be 10,700 construction jobs, or 23,000 operational jobs. And that's part of the larger, anticipated California workforce that's going to be developed. It's not just explicit to the Humboldt area, but it's between Humboldt and Morro Bay that those numbers are anticipated. For kind of both phases of development of farms. Something else that I think that is really important to take into consideration from an economic development point of view. Sorry, somebody's starting yard work immediately outside my window here, so sorry if you hear that weed whacker that just got started. But another piece that's super important to take into consideration is electrification. When I've talked with various folks that, work in economic development, one of the things that they're particularly interested and excited about is the economic development opportunities for when we have better energy reliability and then also increased electrical capacity. For example, with the Nordic Aqua Farms, I can't remember like what the energy capacity is that's needed to power that thing, but it is significant. And then also as we think about our, just the future potential economic development and industry development opportunities here, a better electrical system will, of course, support our ability to attract and retain additional industries in the future. So that's another key component that I think is critical to your purpose. Something additionally with, you all and your leadership position and the leadership with the city as a whole is, I think that it's really important for us to think really holistically about how we want this industry to develop in our community. I think we have had a lot of different sectors or kind of interests working on various aspects of offshore wind. And I'm really seeing that be fairly siloed, and something that I think is going to be important for the long-term viability of the industry and like health of this region, for us to come together and really figure out like what our vision is for how this industry develops here in a really good way. So another piece to keep in mind with your, with the critical work that you all do around this table. And I'd be remiss if I, didn't also talk about some of the downsides in terms of this industry developing here. I'm sure that you all have heard about some really significant concerns that the commercial fisher community has had, that sector has had about offshore wind being developed here. And, of course, the concerns for that industry, folks' livelihoods, but also I think a real shift in sort of the cultural identity of this place. And of course, that's also a concern that tribal fisheries have had, and that, culturally tribes are concerned about as well, as what will happen in the, marine environment as a result of this really new industry being developed here. So from my perspective, one of the things that's interesting about the opportunity to develop at a smaller scale initially, in that like 10 to 15 wind turbines, is that it also gives us a little bit more time as a community to, and with the technology, to start small, to learn, and to figure out then how we need to grow to a much larger scale, as opposed to initially just jumping to, 100 to 160 turbines and a lot more energy being produced and moved through this area potentially. I think, I'm curious if a kind of smaller phase to start with could be of benefit to this place, and also help to kind of socialize the industry, the technology, and the technology, so that, we can learn as we go and have a greater opportunity for mitigating any potential risks of how this technology interfaces with really critical marine environments and, the economy as well. So I could talk about this forever. I think I've probably used up my time. I have a couple more things I could say just about where we're at in the process, Swan, if I have like 2 more minutes. But I'm so happy to bring it to a close.
Please continue.
Okay. So just a couple of pieces on where we're at in the timeline for development. And this is from the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. This is their slide that we've adapted a little bit. So where we're at currently is, where are we? So we're in this phase right here. So a proposed lease sale notice has been published by the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. It was published on May 31st. That began a 60-day comment period where we can, as a community, provide input, influence, recommendations to the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management about how it is that they're going to be structuring these leases, how they're going to be moving forward prior to that with the bidding process, and who they consider a qualified developer to have the opportunity to win a contract to develop an offshore wind farm here. So that's where we're at right now. That's part of this phase. In the fall, I think it's around September, October, that's when the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management is going to be holding their auction where potential developers will be submitting their bids, and likely a couple of developers will be selected to develop a wind farm off the coast here. I think that is most of what you need to know. So the city of Eureka, I've spoken with Miles Flannery about engaging in a community benefit network that we are convening, and Miles is participating, which is really wonderful. It's a pretty broad network of different government agencies and interests that are coming together to see where and how we might align on our public comment into the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management about their proposed process for, who gets considered as a potential developer for offshore wind here. And our hope is that we'll have sort of a clear set of priorities that are determined by that group that a number of different interests can use to frame up their or your responses to the proposed sale notice that BOEM has out right now. So that's a big part of the work that we're doing currently, so that we can have a bit of consistency in how our community is showing up in that public comment to the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, so that we can communicate some real clear values coming from this community and a real clear picture about what's important to us. So, and I know that the City of Eureka is interested in being part of that process, which we're really grateful for, and again appreciate your leadership and the city's leadership and transitioning us to a place of greater climate resilience, and I think this is a really important part of it. So let me know if you have any questions, or if you would like me to connect with you after this meeting with more information or just a conversation.
Amy, thank you so much. Does anybody from the commission have any questions? Looks like Calder has his hand up.
Okay. Let me see. Calder and then Maggie. Yeah, please.
Well, I have a number of questions. Thank you for a wonderful presentation, by the way. That was really informative, and I appreciate it a lot. I think for my biggest question, though, is regarding the impacts on a number of things, our local economy as well as housing. You had noted the estimated number of workers in the different phases of the project, construction as well as operational workers, 5,000, I believe, in the initial startup, and then 33,000, I believe, in the full-scale project. Do you have any kind of estimates in terms of how many of those workers would be new implants, new imports into the region, or people who could be trained here and be local workers?
Yeah. There is a really big effort that's happening. I know that a county is working on securing funding from the state to create a plan and some infrastructure for workforce development, and ideally creating some different career pathways so that local folks can get that training. There's a couple different things in that proposed sale notice, and I'll put a link in the chat before I go if you really want to, take a look at that. And I'll share I can share with Swan hopefully next week a more simplified briefing document with all of you about what's contained in this proposed sale notice. But there are a few different sections in that plan about requirements for developers to invest in workforce and supply chain in the local communities where they're going to, be developing wind farms, both here and off the coast of Morro Bay. So I think in combination with direct funding from the federal government and the state government, because again, like these are critical, like doing this, creating offshore wind as a critical part of our like energy infrastructure in the state of California is a priority and kind of a requirement by both BOEM and the state. So they will be investing also in workforce development here as part of, as part of the strategy. So I don't have the specific numbers about what that's going to look like, but there are folks that are working really hard here locally to ensure that we're ready to do some of that, like growing of our own. And I think that's another reason why having a smaller 10 to 15 turbine wind farm at this phase could be really helpful because it gives us a little bit more time and experience through which we can prepare for the really big build out that'll be happening down the road. So that's one of those things that, I think we'd be more challenged to do that if we had to jump to a really large build out more immediately. And then Maggie, you had something you wanted to share.
Yeah, hi Amy, thank you. Now I know what you've been doing. This is a big project. I think we have to look at these alternatives, and I think it's a struggle certainly with the fishing industry. But if we don't do something about how we use energy, then the fishing industry is continuing to be hit by global warming and by things. So, that's a tough call. My concern is, of course, housing. And so I really think that not only should these people who are going to potentially come in here and do these builds and have employees, not only should there be some workforce and there's no housing. And even if they hire people who live here right now, the benefit of providing, helping the communities build housing is a huge thing, as you know. I mean, I don't need to tell you about the housing issues here. I would almost hate to see the full thing built here by, the next, and maybe I won't in 2045, who knows? But I think our infrastructure in so many ways is just not ready for that level. So I agree doing something small and testing the waters and getting that supply chain of local workers and housing and healthcare into this. It's critical. Otherwise, what we're seeing now is the attraction to moving here from other parts of the country and the state is that this is an oasis in terms of heat, in terms of lots of things. If we doing something like the wind farm is also, of course, going to attract people who feel that that's a great thing to do. We got to take care of the folks who are struggling here too. So, bringing more people here from other places without the infrastructure is always a challenge. So, I'm hoping they really are expected to seriously. I know the federal government doesn't think about local communities the same way local communities think about it. So, I really do think our local communities in the city of Eureka needs to really advocate for those elements that make this community work and make it attractive and make it, and for the people who've lived here for many, many years and haven't just moved here. I've only been here since 1988, and I always say only because I work with older adults who have been here, there's families here, multiple generations, many generations, and I think we really have to respect the opportunities that exist here for people to move here and have good lives, but we also need to help those people who have been in fishing and been in lumber and been in dairy and all those to find other work jobs, other ways to support them too. So that's probably enough for now. Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, I think, to your point, Maggie, having this be part of a broader regional vision for community and economic development, so that we're planning for what you're talking about and doing that in a way that like will support our communities and being climate resilient is super important. And then Erin.
There we go. Found my mute button. Well, I always have a million questions around this wind farm project, but thank you so much for presenting. It's always great to get a refresher of what's going on. One thing to speak to the kind of local technical trade community, if this wind farm consumes too many people, then there'll be no contractors or anybody for their projects or residential projects. So it's going to be one big painful pendulum, and I think there'll be growing pains in all of this. So it's hard to know what that balance is, but also thinking about if it sucks all the resources of the city, then there's no other resources for other people. So a couple other questions I have. What's the biggest issues that are affecting the fishing and tribes? Because 20 years after, 50 years after oil rigs were decommissioned, and active oil rigs are some of the best deep water reefs in the Gulf of Mexico. So I'm just assuming similar things are going to happen with the cables for the floating wind farms.
So there's a number of ways that I want to respond to that, Erin. Again, I put my email in the chat, and we can also dive in more deeply. And before I go, I'll also include a link to the SHOPS Energy Research Center, because they have a lot of really great information, studies, recorded webinars on their website. So I'll share that out. I think clearly the fishing community is really worried about their routes being impacted. That map that you saw 20 miles off the coast, that's a whole chunk of area that our local fishing community uses currently for their work and their livelihoods and the health of that industry. So they're really concerned. They've been at the table. When I say they, I'm talking about commercial fishing in particular. Have been at the table in a really strong way, I think, for a number of years on conversations on the West Coast about offshore wind. They're also, one of the concerns is about the currents and potential disruption to our coastal current that's so important to marine ecology. Another issue is secondary entanglement. So actually old fishing gear. So, you've got for how this is going to work is that there will be floating wind farm, and there will be a cable that is undersea that takes energy from the wind farm onto shore in some way. That cable is going to cross through a lot of fishing ground. And so for old fishing equipment that is out in the ocean and is riding those coastal currents, it will get caught up in that cable and could create marine ecology issues. It could also create different safety issues that we're not quite sure of yet. So one of the requirements of whoever it is that develops this technology off the coast is that they have a commitment to and are required to deal with that issue of what's called secondary entanglement. And that can be done through robotics. It can be done through a lot of, interesting methodologies, but it's a concern as well. And then I think for tribal nations, tribal fisheries, some of those are also issues of concern. I think the view shed, or what you can see from the coast, or critical cultural sites, on land or close to off land is a concern, as well as the domain of tribal nations in the ocean and sort of their sovereignty over, parts of what happens in the ocean is another concern. I think tribes are also interested in economic enterprise and economic development opportunities with offshore wind. So I think a lot of our tribes locally are also thinking really critically about, employment, workforce development, and having some kind of direct, economic enterprise as it relates to offshore wind. So I think there's a whole diversity of perspectives from tribal nations, and folks in our leadership also recognize that that climate change is changing our marine ecology. So it's there are a lot of risks to doing something like offshore wind, but there are also a lot of risks to not doing that. So everyone I think understands just that it's complex.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. That was a good explanation. Thanks for kind of updating me on the issues out there. I would think a view would be a lot better than a smokestack. So, I guess my last question is, what's the single best way that EDC can kind of help influence or guide this project to best benefit Eureka?
Yeah, I think staying engaged, when we get to a place where there is more of a kind of broader visioning, in Humboldt or more regionally around how we want to see this industry develop here, I think your role, your commission's role and staff's role is going to be absolutely critical. And I think sort of informing yourselves about what the economic development opportunities are and working with, Miles and others in the city about how to comment on that as part of this comment period for the proposed sale notice to Bowen is also going to be really critical. So we're working to kind of firm up what some recommendations might be, but I think the city will likely have interests in addition, hopefully the city will want to sign on to some of the recommendations we're making about comments into that proposed sale notice, but you may also have some that are specific to your economic development goals and kind of community development goals at the city. So I think being prepared to respond to that, and those are due by August 1st. So it's right around the corner. And that's not the only opportunity to engage and participate. This industry is going to be developing here over many years to come. So I think this is a critical opportunity, but there'll be many more.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Thanks so much for your time. I know you've got a lot of other business to get to. Swan, thank you so much for the invitation. And let me know if there are questions that come up after this. We're happy to share information with you or come back at another time or meet with you kind of individually or at your own organizations, whatever might be helpful. Happy to do it.
Thank you. Can you share your slide deck with us and I can send it out to the rest of the commission? And I'll be looking at the shots website for the webinar to send out with everybody too.
Yeah, definitely. I'll put the shots link in before I go, and then I'll send you the slide deck in just a little bit by email.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we still do not have a quorum, so I think we need to skip our approval of the minutes and our business of the month, but I would still like to present to the quorum about the Economic Development Strategic Plan check-in, and then also talk about a beautification plan outline that we're working on, and then lastly I'd like Amanda to talk about some of the events that we have coming up.
Great.
Okay, so I'm just going to skip ahead to the Economic Development Strategic Plan. Can you all see my presentation? Yes, okay. So this is not new to the commission. We do this every month. Tonight we're going to be talking about we're wrapping up our first year of our strategic plan, and so we're going to be planning for next year, what our action items are going to be for next year. So I'm just going to be going through what we do every month, and then we'll start talking about next year. So for anybody that is watching these meetings that is new to this, we have a strategic plan that we adopted in last September, went to City Council, and was adopted in October. It can be found on the city's economic development page on the website. It's basically a prioritized list of projects we're going to be working on throughout the years, and we want this to be a living document. We don't want this to just be put on the shelf, and so every year we're going to be checking in on this document. We're going to do an annual report to City Council in August on what we've accomplished this past year and any modifications we think we need to make going forward so that we can keep evolving this as we go. These are the commitments that these are the action items that we committed to for this past year. So I'm going to go through them. So far, the action items we've completed, we've aligned our economic development efforts with our guiding document and aligns with our housing element and general plan and all the other strategic planning processes that are going on within the city. We created an economic development website, which is eurecaisready.com. We consolidated our business-serving agencies, so that is Eureka Main Street and Eureka Visitor Center, came in department. In progress, we're digitizing our business license applications and collecting business data. So citywide, right now we're working on a process called OpenGov, where a lot of our processes will be digitized. So like business building permit applications and things of that nature. The city is working on a brand new website that will hopefully be going live in August, and then the OpenGov pieces will be part of that. So that will include the business license application. And at the same time, we're creating a database of our business licenses so that we can communicate with our businesses more effectively. Implement a business retention and recruitment program. This is an ongoing thing that we're working on. Part of that is our Business of the Month program and our Business of the Year. We're talking about a podcast, and we have our community conversation videos that are happening. Implementing and funding our facade SEPTED program. That's an ongoing program. That's one of create a beautification plan. I'm going to be reporting on that after this. And that will include zero waste stuff and corridor revitalization stuff. Create a broadband plan for Eureka. That's a project that's being spearheaded by our Public Works Department. Certifying our local coastal program amendment. That is being led by our planning department. Our engineering department recently completed their parking study, and now the planning department is working on their waterfront plan. They just had a public meeting this past week about it, which will influence the zoning code that happens on the coastal part of the city. And then lastly, updating our current cannabis ordinance. This has been long in the coming. It was recently approved by our planning commission and is now going to city council, so that is moving. So here's an overview. What's completed, what's in process. We've got a lot of things in process. And this kind of shows, we're wrapping up this year and pulling everything together before we move on to the next year. But this is where I want to talk about what our plans are for next year. So in our Economic Development Strategic Plan, these are the action items that we have outlined for the upcoming year. Action 2B, inventorying business needs, wants, and requirements. So that is like the phase 2 of the creation of our business license database. We want to be able to communicate more efficiently with our business community. It's one thing to be sitting in City Hall thinking you know what businesses need. It's very different for businesses to communicate with us regularly about what they need. Streamlining regulations and processes to support a business-friendly reputation. This is a really important process that will kind of go over multiple departments. The city of Riverside did something similar to this. They have a program, it's called Streamline Riverside, that was really inspiring. And they really worked with all their departments to communicate more clearly about processes and expectations and how to update processes and communicate them and have them be more available online. So like if you're a developer, being able to apply a building permit and see what all the different processes are in front of you and what the time cost will be ahead of time, instead of kind of being bounced around from department to department. The next two action items: identify and plan for medical center expansion and develop a strategy to establish Eureka as a center for destination healthcare. Both of these things start with us meeting with our current healthcare leaders and talking about what they need to support them in what they're doing right now, and then making a plan for how we can support them going forward and being prepared ahead of time for any expansion or needs that they might have so that happen as smoothly and easily for them. Action 10A, identify strategies for expanding existing office-based businesses. And Eureka is a hub of office-based uses. A lot of people come into Eureka from the county to conduct their business, and so communicating with our office tenants as far as how it is going for them, what they need to update their office spaces. I think COVID really disrupted how a lot of work gets done. We have a lot more remote workers now, and so what is the future of office-based work, and what can Eureka do to get ready and to help our property owners get ready? And then lastly, evaluate the market for commercial cruise ship visitation. We had our first cruise ship come in May for this year. We have 2 more coming in September, and we have 4 more that have reached out with interest for next year. And we're having ongoing conversations with the harbor and the county as far as roles and responsibilities. So who is doing what, and what can we all do to support this industry that's interested in Eureka? I would like to recommend that we add 3 more additional action items for next year. The first one being the creation of an accessory dwelling unit financing program. Part of the housing element, there are 6 different strategies that Eureka has to create housing in Eureka. One of them is to encourage accessory dwelling units, which is basically mother-in-law units. Currently, my understanding is it's very difficult to finance the construction of accessory dwelling units, and so the city has an opportunity. We have some housing successor funds that we could possibly turn into a loan program where we could partner with a lender and pre-approve someone. We would fund the construction of the accessory dwelling unit, and then once it's constructed, we would then roll the loan over to the lender, and the city would get reimbursed. And so this would be a program that would touch multiple departments, and it would take leadership from someone from our staff. So we need to build in that capacity, but that is a program that we're interested in adding to our strategic plan for next year. We also want to add on the implementation of the beautification plan. So tonight I'm going to be talking. We don't just want to talk about it, we want to implement it, and so having that be part of it. And then it's also time to do an update of our strategic arts plan. The strategic arts plan was adopted in 2017. It's a 5-year plan, so it's time for us to do a new plan. So those are the plans currently for next year, and I wanted to get the Commission's feedback on if there's additional items you want us to add or things that you think we should shift around. This is the time. Claudia, I see your hand up.
All right, yeah. First off, I just wanted to give feedback on all of the additional items you listed there. I mean, big, fat, huge yes to all of those. Those are all super important. I think I saw Aaron note this too. Like, I particularly, obviously the strategic arts plan update is a no-brainer for me, but the ADU financing program is a huge deal as well. I mean, I think that, obviously we're in the midst of a housing crisis. ADUs are a huge part of solving that puzzle. And I think just making ADU construction easier any way we possibly can is the way to go. So I think I'm a huge supporter of all of those. I would, if I were going to potentially think of anything that I would think about adding to those additional action items, I think that it would be good to start exploring ways of addressing commercial vacancies, particularly in the downtown area. I know that where I work, there's just, we're struggling with a lot of commercial vacancies that have been now at this point vacant for beyond 6 months, a year at this point. And I think exploring options within the city government for addressing that issue, I think would be an important part of that plan. So that would be my suggestion for the additional action items. And then also, just because you mentioned, I think it was 11C or 11D, the commercial cruise ship, exploring that. My question would be, since we did just have the recent cruise ship that arrived, obviously that was a big deal. I know you were working super hard on that. Do we have any data yet from that? Do we know, or do we have are we starting to get a sense of like what the financial impact was from that particular visit? Do we know if that data is being gathered or en route? That would be my follow-up question to that. And thank you, Swan.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to both of those things. Commercial vacancies are definitely something we are also very aware of, and I think part of the beautification plan, we talk about corridor revitalization, and that's a big part of it, and I'll talk about that in more detail. I do think calling that out specifically would be helpful. As far as the cruise ship data, it's a very hard thing to collect data on. Our sales tax doesn't go day by day. I know that Eddie Alexander is able to do cell phone data, and we can kind of see how much draw it brought down there. It seemed like one of the biggest impacts was locals actually coming down to see the ship. And so that's a conversation that we're having. I think that individual visits for cruise ships, the reward is not worth the lift. However, I think there's going to hit a point where if we have enough of them, it will be worthwhile. And we're not sure what that point is yet. Aaron?
Yeah, I would say about the commercial cruise ships, it's kind of third or last on the list for me. They are, from my last understanding of the cruise ship coming there, they were just here to see the redwoods and then they left. Right? It was pretty jumping off the boat and jumping back on the boat pretty quick. And it's going to be super hard to control that private entity to come to Eureka, mingle, set up infrastructure for them. Until we have a set volume of cruise ships. I am in 100% agreement with ADUs and beautification. I think those two kind of go hand in hand for infrastructure for the city of Eureka and just our housing shortage. And I believe both of them are going to take a lot of bandwidth. So my only comment would just be, refinement and yeah, but I agree with those, ADU and beautification. So thank you, Swan. I wish I could vote today.
Well, we're coming up for next month to vote. We'll be wrapping up this year, and then we'll be voting on our plans for next year, and then we'll be going to city council following that. So this is really just to kind of check in and make sure we're heading in the right direction before we brought it to you to vote. So, yeah.
No, I really appreciate the check-ins because it's a good refresher. So I think that's just fundamentally important, even if it's 10 minutes and just briefly saying what have we done and where are we going. I think it's good for the EDC just to see what's going on and have a refresher. So thank you.
Thank you. So I will move on to our beautification plan, which is under reports. So right now we're doing the interviews for the Economic Development Strategic Plan. We had like a list of projects that we asked people to vote on and rank, and consistently beautification was just like right up there at the top. Everybody really wants beautification, and this is something that we really saw with the Strategic Arts Plan. I think part of the reason why the Strategic Arts Plan was so successful was because there was visible change, and I think a lot of people in Eureka are really hungry for that. You really saw it when the utility box program rolled out. All of a sudden people were like, whoa, what is going on in Eureka? And so beautification is an ongoing thing, and so there's a lot of different folks doing a lot of different things, and our hope is to kind of bring everyone together and get it all organized and concise into one document, and so that everybody can kind of know what's going on and what's available. So tonight I want to go over an outline for the document. I want to talk about what process we have in mind for this plan, and then I'm looking for feedback to find out, yes, you think we're on the right track, or no, this is not what you all think we should be doing, and then what other additions you think need to happen as we start diving into the content. So like this is the outline for it, and then we'll be fleshing out the content as we go forward. So as far as process, tonight we're starting with this commission presenting the outline. From this point, we will then be meeting with all the different departments that are involved in beautification, so community services, code enforcement, public works, department. And then we'll be meeting with our different volunteer groups and different organizations outside of the city. Project Eureka and Keep Eureka Beautiful and Pack Out Community, and there's always different organizations that are doing great things in Eureka, and we want to get their input and make sure that the information we include in this document is up to date. And then from there, we'll have a drafted document and we'll meet with our subcommittee. So this project already has a subcommittee. Our List Commission will be taking the draft to the subcommittee, getting their input, and then we'll bring it back to this commission in July for adoption, and then take the city. And I just noticed you have a hand up.
No, I never took it down.
Oh, that's okay. Just making sure. The document, we're basically going to be breaking it down into two different sections. The first part will be a resource guide, and then the second part will be a project list. And then, so for the resource guide, that will also be further broken down into three sections. So the first section will be property owner responsibilities, then city resources available, and then organizational resources available, what's available in the community. So for under property owner responsibilities, the things that we've chosen to include so far are sidewalks and gutters. I don't think a lot of property owners realize that they're responsible for maintaining dumpsters and trash cans. We get calls from businesses that their neighboring business left their trash can out in front of their business for days on end, and so just kind of the etiquette of how to be a good neighbor regarding dumpsters and trash cans. Our city resources available, there's a lot of different programs that are available under different departments, and so we want to kind of consolidate all this into one area so that people can easily find what's available to them. So like right now the city has an abandoned vehicle program. We have a sidewalk tripping hazard program. If you have a tripping hazard, you can report it and we'll go out and grind it down. Our code enforcement team has a dumpster program. They have so many free dumpsters that they can give out per year. And consistently we have leftover dumpsters at the end of the year that didn't get out, so we want to make sure people know that this is an option for them. We have a neighborhood mini grant program. We have our facade septed program. We have, a graffiti removal volunteer team that goes out and removes a ton of graffiti around town, and Aaron has a lot of tips on if you have like a specific kind of surface or something like that. They have advice on how to remove graffiti, and it's just a resource that's available. And then we have an illegal dumping hotline. And then we also want to show what other groups are doing and what's available. So, an example is Recology has a bulky item pickup that they can help with, and they do street sweeping. Pack Out Green Team and Project Eureka and Eureka have regular cleanups, and so we want to list those opportunities that are available. And then for our project list, our number one project is corridor revitalization projects. So this is going to be a big one. I think we all immediately think of 4th and 5th Street. There's a couple blocks that have high vacancy rates. This is what Calder was speaking to earlier. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all solution to these issues. I think it's going to take us going block by block and property owner by property owner and talking to them and finding out what the issues are and what we can do to help. And so this is going to be kind of mapping out our corridors and which blocks to tackle first. And then it also includes Broadway. Caltrans has a lot of projects in the plans for Broadway, and we want to be able to direct people to that planning. Vacant storefronts is an ongoing issue. We're all aware of it. So we have some ideas on how to handle that. Part of that will fall. What we'd like to do, because our septed facade program is working really well, we'd like to add a component to that would be directed at vacant storefronts and help with grants to help maintain and secure vacant storefronts in an attractive way. Hanging baskets and planners. We have a hanging basket program in Old Town. We'd like to expand that, how people can get a hanging basket, how to water it, how to maintain it. Twinkle lights. We often have businesses reach out to us. They want to put twinkle lights in the street tree in front of them. We just need to kind of communicate the process for that, as far as if they need an encroachment permit, who's putting up the lights, what lights we recommend, who's supplying the power, what happens when the lights get damaged or need replacing, just kind of outlining rules and expectations. Light pole banners, would like to continue with our light pole banners. On 4th and 5th Street, our cultural district banners need to be updated. And then some of our hoteliers have expressed interest in partnering with us to put light pole banners on Broadway. Graffiti removal, we'd like to have more resources available for people when they have an issue with graffiti. Maybe there'll be graffiti removal kits, such things of that nature. A replanting plan. Community Services has a replanting plan for Old Town and downtown. If you've noticed, a lot of the public spaces in Old Town have already been fixed up, and there's a whole plan to continue doing that, so just sharing. Community Services also has a zero waste action plan that they're working on, and so how we can communicate projects are in the works and how this can affect businesses and I will say in this position, a surprise I didn't anticipate is how many people reach out to me about dumpsters and dumpster issues and issues with their neighbors. And it's something that I think we just kind of see so often that we don't even really notice it, but it makes a big difference when dumpsters are cleaned up and secured. And so part of this is going to be working with businesses to reduce their waste, and then also working with businesses to secure their dumpsters to their building. And so that's the next action items, dumpster consolidation and security. Wayfinding billboards and gateways. This has been something we've been working on. We've been add signage to strategic tourism spots like the Skywalk and the zoo. Our billboards, we've been rewrapping our billboards. We still need to paint the bases of them. Had issues with them getting tagged regularly, so we need to find a solution for that. And then gateways, north and south gateways coming in and out of town, that's been an ongoing topic for many years, and so just getting down on paper how we're going to try to address that. And then the strategic arts plan, integrating the strategic arts plan into, is a big part of beautification. So after our project list, we'll do an implementation matrix. So we'll need to break down the cost for these projects, the timeline, how we're going to fund them, and then the implementation bodies, how are we going to get these projects done, and how we can partner to get these done. And so that is the plan for our beautification plan. And so I'm looking for our feedback to make sure we're on the right path and what you think we should add. I see Calder's hand up.
Yeah, this looks really good. I was really impressed by the plan. Thank you, Swan. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of the SEPTED plan, the program. Obviously, NCRT was able to benefit from that. So I think continuing down that road is great. I think all of those priorities are wonderful. I think actually it was interesting when you mentioned dumpster issues and that was just kind of a surprising issue that popped up for you. I was thinking, some of the issues that we just have over at NCRT, for example, we don't have a dumpster, but we have several garbage cans that are an ongoing issue for us, either walking off or getting the trash spread around through ecology. And part of the things that we're struggling with is that ecology is very clear that they don't want this secured in any way. So I feel like there's maybe some kind of communication here that needs to happen between something that could happen between ecology and business owners that addresses the problem in a way that actually meets ecology's requirements that the garbage cans or dumpsters have to basically be available to be emptied by their staff and with their equipment. Because that has been an ongoing issue for us, and we're kind of struggling with we don't know what to do on that point.
We've been inviting Ecology to attend our SEPTED meetings, and it's been so far very positive, and I agree this definitely requires a partnership with Ecology, and so we are working on building that relationship. But yes, you are correct. And I see your hands up.
Yeah, how much of this is, this is more infrastructure, but trees and lights and kind of bringing people out of restaurants?
That's a huge part of it, and it's also communicating how individual property owners can do this for themselves. So one thing I feel like we learned with the strategic arts plan when we first started the strategic arts plan is it was how can we do all these projects? Really, now I just want to communicate to people, you want a mural? This is how you do a mural. Here's the steps. And there's so many people that are interested in doing good things in Eureka, and so just creating a roadmap for people, that's more than anything what I think this document is going to be. There's going to be the project list that we're going to be working on, but it's also what they can do for themselves and what the processes are to do those things, and it'll all add up.
Absolutely. Is there any way to incentivize these businesses to act in a monetary way, like a tax reduction or matched money or something? That's that's for me just the bottom line for a lot of businesses.
So we have a neighborhood mini grant that's very broad. We want to give out those funds. Those are $500 mini grants to do a beautification project. So like the Henderson's and Merchant Association right now, they want to do a lot of landscaping where they're going to be purchasing specific kinds of planters, and businesses are going to be adopting those planters. And so we've partnered them, or we've spread out the neighborhood mini grant program to them with the hope that they can help pay for the improvements that they're making.
That's great. That's great. Is there a streamlined way to plant a massive tree? Because I swear, when I'm walking around Old Town, I always know when it creates a totally different environment when you're under a tree.
Keep Eureka Beautiful will plant a street tree for you for $75. Keep Eureka Beautiful is ready and eager to plant trees for you. And there is a street tree plan for the cultural district. We have mapped out where all the underground utilities are. We are ready to plant trees for people. And I agree that street trees are the biggest bang for your buck as far as beautification.
How do I go pay every business to put a street tree in front of their...
Please reach out to Keep Eureka Beautiful. They need you, Aaron.
Okay, that's great. You have all the answers, so thank you.
Carter?
Oh, yeah, so just a follow-up question. Because you said that you, as far as commercial vacancies, you're looking for solutions and going out, like just to individual property owners and talking to them. I am wondering, out of any of those conversations that might have already happened, like are there common issues being identified, or certain things that are coming up repeatedly? I don't know. Like I'm just interested, like how those conversations have gone.
The conversations we've had so far is it's elderly property owners that are interested in updating their space to be compliant with building codes. And so it's working with them one-on-one to find potential tenants, and helping them through any kind of permitting process that they might need. One thing that has come up with City Council is a vacancy tax. And part of our issue with that is there isn't vacancy rate data. Years ago, the planning department did a vacancy rate study, and it required a planner to go building by building and knock on doors and find out how many units were in buildings and how many were vacant. And it was a lot of effort for just a snapshot in time. And so I've been trying to figure out a better way to get data for vacancy rates. And we've thought through utility data, like we have water billing data. I'm meeting with the group next week that this is what they do. They do data for economic development, and I said specifically this is the kind of data I'm looking for. So we'll see if it's something that they can really offer. But I think it would be helpful. I feel like we could put our resources into the data, or there's just, I think we all have some gut checks on where some vacancies are that really could use some. That's where we'll start. Yeah?
No, just didn't lower my hand again. Currently going through the Keep Eureka Beautiful website, so thank you.
Well, before we adjourn, I am embarrassed to say I forgot to introduce Sarah West. So we have a new staff member that's with us tonight. She is with us as a temporary employee right now, but she is helping us with a ton of projects. And we're thrilled and privileged to have her. And so I just wanted to welcome you, Sarah, and introduce you. And she'll be a person that you all get to know.
Hey, Sarah. Glad to have you.
for me. I appreciate the commission of 8 that you 3 are here.
Thank you, Swan, as always.
Yeah, thank you, Swan.
Thanks, everybody. And you want to join us?
We are adjourned. Is that all?
I'm sorry. I forgot that. I'm so sorry, Amanda. Amanda's going to give us an update on all the wonderful events that are happening.
Thank you. Amanda.
Okay, so since we're into winter, things are starting to come around. So the Henderson Center Farmers Markets have already started. They're on Thursdays from 10 to 1. The Old Town Farmers Markets will start on, I think it's June 28th. So we're on Tuesdays from 10 to 1 in winter. Tomorrow is the first summer night of Eureka Summer concert. It'll be 5 brothers. I think they're all in bars. And so that'll be the first of 10 Thursdays down at Atlantic Plaza from 6 to 8 p.m. And Friday night markets will also be returning tomorrow on July 1st. So what we're really excited about is we have a huge 4th of July weekend as well as events. We'll start off on Thursday, June 30th with a summer concert. That one is Beats Are Working, or classic rock band. And then Friday, the 1st, will be Farmers Market, the Friday night market. And then we're going to be from 5:30 to 8:30 every Friday through the end of September. And then on Saturday, the 2nd, we have a skateboard art fundraiser that's in Clark Plaza, and that's will be some ramp out there, and we'll be doing some tricks too, and that's from 4 to 9 p.m. We have Arts and Wine also that night from 6 to 9, and we have a day off for Sunday, but we'll be coming back on Monday with the 4th of July Festival, again down in Old Town on 2nd Street. That includes the vendors with 2 music stages, lots of food vendors, and the carnival will actually be down there at the waterfront again this 4th of July. And then at 10 p.m. the fireworks are going to be. So that is what happening on that weekend, so that's going to be huge. And then also coming up on our radar is the Hollywood Marathon, our 7th marathon, is going to be on August 14th, and Eureka is planned for September 8th through the 10th. So we have lots of fun things coming up. And Eureka Street Art Festival. Eureka Street Art Festival. I don't know that application. I have to submit it. It's 26th. Black Powder on the 6th. So this year we have 5 rounds, but we're going to run 1 and then very exciting, we are painting 3 of the pillars on the Sonora Bridge. So we have our block party coming back this year. We're expecting about 5,000 people. So on the 6th, come down to the bridge.
And I assume all these events are already posted online.
Yes. Yes. So that's it from us. Aaron, do you want to adjourn us?
Yes, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
If only my commission would show. How's it going?